She doesn't fall for effort. She falls for feelings. She doesn't care how consistent you are if you don't shift how she feels inside. She doesn't hold on to the man who gave her the most. She holds on to the man who made her feel something she couldn't find anywhere else. You gave her attention. He gave her emotional impact. You tried harder. He stayed in her head. Now ask yourself, which one do you want to be? Drop "I'm the prize" in the comments if you're ready to change everything. Number 1. Stop giving it all. You keep wondering why she lost interest the moment you started showing up consistently, why she suddenly pulled back after you opened up, why the more you gave, the colder she became. And deep down, you know it wasn't about something you said or did. It's about what your actions revealed, that your time, your energy, your emotional access cost nothing, and nothing that costs nothing is ever valued. You offered your attention before it was requested, gave your validation without it being earned, poured out your emotional availability like water into a cup with no bottom, hoping she'd finally see that you're different from the ones who hurt her, hoping your loyalty would buy her loyalty, that your presence would make her stay. But it didn't, because she wasn't looking for a caretaker. She was looking for an emotional experience that made her feel something real, something unshakable, something rooted in depth, not desperation. And the brutal truth is you tried to buy her respect with emotional favors, and she only grew resentful because deep down she wanted someone she had to reach for, not someone who knelt to her. You thought being kind and attentive and patient and always there would prove you're safe, would prove you're worth it. But she didn't want safe. She wanted strong. And the strongest people don't give themselves away for free. They know their worth isn't measured by how much they give, but by what they withhold. Until it's earned, they don't throw their energy at every opportunity. They let people climb for it, stretch for it, grow for it. And when you reverse that polarity and made yourself the one doing the reaching, the chasing, the proving, you traded your power for the illusion of closeness, and that illusion cost you everything. Because what she wants isn't effort. It's energy with gravity, energy that commands respect, presence that makes her rise to meet it, not sit back and receive it like a service. And I know you thought you were doing the right thing. I know you thought this is how you love, how you build trust, how you stand out. But in trying to stand out, you only proved you don't know your own value. Because if you did, you would have let her feel your absence before she tasted your presence. You would have given less. Not because you're manipulative, but because you respect yourself enough not to give intimacy to someone who hasn't invested in it. And that's the missing piece. They can't value what they don't earn. And you keep giving yourself away and calling it love. But it's not love if it empties you. It's not love if it leaves you questioning your worth every night, staring at a phone that doesn't ring, wondering why the more real you got, the more invisible you became. And it's time you stop pretending that overgiving is noble. It's not. It's neglect. Neglect of your own needs, your own standards, your own boundaries. And the moment you realize that, the moment you sit in that discomfort and decide not to chase, not to convince, not to perform, that's the moment you reclaim yourself. And I get it. The silence hurts. The distance stings. The rejection feels personal. But what if I told you it's not rejection, it's redirection? Because life is trying to show you something, that your energy is sacred and it belongs in places where it multiplies, not where it drains, where it empowers, not where it begs. And if you want to change this pattern, you have to change your posture. Stop leaning forward into people who lean away. Stop speaking first in every conversation. Stop being the one who fixes things that aren't yours to fix. Stop being afraid that if you don't give, they'll leave. Let them, because the ones who only stay for what they take were never with you anyway. And I know that sounds harsh, but you're not here for comfort. You're here for clarity. And clarity doesn't come through lies. It comes through the kind of truth that cracks your ego wide open and makes space for you to grow. And that growth starts when you sit still, when you stop trying to be the solution to someone else's boredom or emptiness, and instead become the answer to your own. And that's what Stoicism is, not coldness, not detachment, but discipline, self-command, the ability to stay still while the world demands you react. the strength to hold your silence when validation would feel better, the wisdom to choose solitude over performance. And if you can embrace that, if you can learn to value your energy like it's gold, not because it's rare but because it's powerful, then everything changes, because suddenly you're no longer the one trying to be chosen, you're the one choosing, and that energy is felt long before you speak. And it's that energy that creates respect, not your effort, not your availability, not your romantic gestures, because those things only matter when they come from someone who knows how to keep them, someone who gives with intention, not from fear of losing. And that's the shift you need, the shift from effort to elegance, from performance to presence, from chasing to choosing. And the next time you feel that urge to prove yourself, stop, breathe, ask yourself, is this action coming from power or from panic? Am I expressing or am I hoping? And if it's the latter, don't do it. Sit in the space instead. Let it stretch you, because in that space is where you find yourself, your truth, your peace, and eventually someone who sees it, feels it, and reaches for it, not because you gave it all, but because you gave only what aligned with your value. And when you live that way, when you embody that discipline, you don't just stop giving it all. You start giving only what builds, only what uplifts, only what strengthens. And that's the kind of love that doesn't beg to be held. It invites itself to be earned. If that message hit your core, if something inside you knows it's time to reclaim your power, your peace, your presence, then the Stoic Relationship Blueprint is your next step. This isn't just a book. It's a shift. A guide rooted in timeless principles designed to make you unshakable in love, purpose, and presence. And now it's available in audiobook form. You can listen to it while walking, training, driving, clearing your head. Let the wisdom sink in where your silence begins. This is the kind of knowledge that doesn't expire. Once it's yours forever. No more confusion. No more being lost in what-ifs. The link is in the comments. Own your evolution. Start now. Number 2. Let her earn you. Validation that comes too early destroys all desire, especially when it's handed to someone who hasn't put in any effort to deserve it. Because once something is freely given, it's viewed as common, not precious. And most give themselves away too quickly, trying to be accepted, trying to be seen as enough, hoping that by showing their worth through constant availability and emotional generosity, they'll be chosen. But in doing so, they destroy the chase, the mystery, the respect that fuels true connection, because respect is never granted through generosity alone. It's forged through discernment, through boundaries, through quiet strength that doesn't beg for recognition. And many enter relationships already surrendered, already exposed, already stripped of their edge, giving emotional intimacy in exchange for basic attention, mistaking consistency for connection. But consistency without boundaries only builds comfort, not value. And what's comfortable rarely compels anyone to grow or stay. And in a world where people are addicted to attention, the rarest currency becomes selective energy, measured presence, knowing when to lean in and when to pull back, not to manipulate, but to maintain dignity. Because the moment attention is expected, it's no longer appreciated, and this is where most fail. They think affection means being constantly accessible, constantly responding, constantly anticipating needs. But what it actually does is teach others they never have to reach, never have to show effort, never have to qualify. And this creates imbalance, not connection, because any dynamic without mutual investment leads to resentment. And this is what poisons so many situationships and modern flings. One person giving endlessly, the other coasting on minimum input, and yet the one giving wonders why they're not chosen, not prioritized, not remembered. And the answer is simple: they didn't require effort, and what costs nothing can be discarded without guilt. And that is the brutal truth most don't want to face, because it requires taking responsibility for your part in being overlooked, in being replaced, in being forgotten. And that responsibility means changing the approach, refusing to play the emotional ATM, the emotional therapist, the safety net for someone who hasn't earned your presence, because love without standards is self-betrayal dressed as romance, and boundaries aren't about keeping people out, they're about protecting your depth, because only those who meet your standard deserve your softness, and this begins by observing how quickly people feel entitled to your energy, your time, your validation, and instead of rewarding their inconsistency with more attention, the correct response is withdrawal, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. And that self-respect is demonstrated by becoming the kind of person who knows they bring value by existing, not by overextending, not by proving, not by fixing what's not theirs to fix. And until this truth is fully understood, cycles repeat: overgiving, underappreciation, frustration, confusion, and it becomes easy to blame others. But the shift happens when the lens turns inward, and the hard question is asked: why is earning me so easy? Why is my energy so accessible? Why do I give at the hint of attention? And the answer often lies in fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being overlooked, fear of losing something that was never really yours. And overcoming that fear is where transformation begins, where the Stoic mindset must be adopted, the kind that says, I will not react emotionally to validation or rejection. I will not chase someone to complete me. I will not seek external reassurance to feel enough, because I already am, and that knowing quiets the chaos, removes the need to perform, and allows decisions to be made from a place of clarity, and from that clarity comes power. Because power isn't in getting everyone to like you. It's in knowing that who doesn't value you is doing you a favor. And once that truth is integrated, everything changes, because standards become non-negotiable, emotional access becomes sacred, and affection becomes a gift, not a tactic. And from there you begin to attract differently, engage differently, feel differently, not because others changed, but because your posture did. And the world responds to posture, not performance. And if someone is not rising to meet your presence, it's not a cue to lower your standard. It's a signal to move on, and that movement is the highest form of self-worth, because it says, I will not water myself down to be tolerated. I will not simplify my truth to be accepted. I will not hand over my emotional wealth to someone who sees it as spare change. And this mindset, when applied consistently, filters out the unworthy, the inconsistent, the opportunists who only stay when it's easy, and opens the door to those who come ready, come prepared, come with a mirror of effort, of presence, of purpose. And that's the shift, the new foundation. Not chasing love, but attracting alignment. And alignment requires friction, because what's earned is respected, and what's respected is cared for, and what's cared for doesn't walk away without thought, without weight, without hesitation. And that is where lasting connection lives, not in the ease of access, but in the depth of effort it took to stay. And this is what must be remembered. You are not here to be easy to access. You are here to be unforgettable through your energy, your peace, your presence. And that presence only holds value when it's protected, preserved, prioritized by you first. So let her earn you, not because you need to prove your worth, but because you finally understand that your worth needs no proof, only protection. Number 3, master the emotional shift. Attraction isn't built by logic, effort, or intentions. It's forged in the way someone makes you feel when you're in their presence, and even more when you're not. And that shift isn't about saying the right words or knowing the perfect timing. It's about creating an emotional imprint that stays long after your voice stops. And the truth is, people remember feelings more than facts. They remember how safe or alive or awakened they felt around someone, not the conversations, not the dates, not the gifts, but that internal shift. And most never learn this because they're too busy trying to convince someone with reason, trying to debate their way into someone's heart, trying to become useful instead of impactful. But logic never anchors someone emotionally. Experience does, and experience is what most never bother to create, because it requires presence, not pressure, requires calm, not chasing. And most walk around carrying desperation instead of depth, wondering why their energy repels instead of attracts. And that's because neediness is not the problem. Unawareness is unaware that emotions are contagious, that anxiety spreads like fire, that insecurity screams louder than words ever could. And until self-awareness replaces self-obsession, nothing changes. And that's where the shift begins, when energy is no longer reactive, but grounded, when responses aren't driven by panic, but peace, when you no longer seek to be felt, you become someone who is, without effort. And that means shedding the habit of performing, the addiction to being understood, and stepping into internal alignment. Because when you're aligned, you don't need approval to act, and that non-neediness creates attraction that logic can't explain. Because it triggers curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of desire, and desire isn't built in comfort, it's built in contrast, and that contrast starts when someone meets you and feels something unfamiliar. Stillness in chaos, certainty without arrogance, clarity without force. And most don't offer this because they've never created it in themselves. And this is the part most skip. They try to master others before they've mastered their own energy. But if your peace can't survive discomfort, your presence will always feel unstable, and instability is forgettable. But calm, grounded, centered presence lingers, not because it's loud, but because it gives others something rare, a break from the noise inside their own head. And when you become the person whose energy feels like relief, you become addictive, because relief is unforgettable. And that doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming responsible for your emotion. And responsibility means knowing when to hold space, when to pull back, when to say nothing. Not because you're afraid, but because your silence has weight. Because your presence speaks louder than justification. And when that becomes your default, you become the person others return to in their mind, not out of obligation, but out of internal shift, because they associate you with how they felt when you weren't trying to fix, to impress, to entertain. And this is the level most never reach because it requires restraint. And restraint is the mark of power, not pretending to care less, but truly needing nothing from others to validate what's already known internally. And if that power is cultivated, if your energy becomes a reflection of inner truth, then everything changes, because now you're not offering people a distraction, you're offering them clarity. And people don't chase validation, they chase what helps them feel aligned, and alignment feels like home. And people return to what feels like home, even when they don't understand why. And this is why the strongest connections aren't logical, they're spiritual, felt deep in the gut. And they're formed not by saying the right thing, but by being the right thing at the right time. And to be that, you must embody stillness in chaos, not because you're avoiding emotion, but because you understand it. And mastery of the emotional shift means knowing how your energy affects the room before you speak, how your posture communicates certainty, how your silence carries more meaning than empty reassurance. And this is what must be practiced. Learning to feel without becoming reactive, learning to listen without needing to be heard, learning to show up with your full presence without needing acknowledgement. And that isn't weakness. It's the highest form of power, and power isn't about dominance. It's about consistency in energy. Because when your energy is predictable in the face of unpredictability, people trust you even when they don't understand why. And trust leads to depth, and depth leads to memory. And memory leads to connection, and connection without effort is the only kind that sustains, and that comes not by chasing, but by shifting. Shifting from reaction to intention, from emotional addiction to emotional direction. And direction means you decide how you show up, not others, not situations, not external chaos. And the moment you stop reacting to everything and start choosing what deserves your energy, the entire dynamic shifts, because now you're the one who decides the rhythm of the relationship. And rhythm is everything, because rhythm creates emotional tempo, and that tempo becomes what they expect from you. And expectation leads to security, and security leads to trust, and trust leads to obsession, not the kind born from fear, but the kind born from the comfort of feeling something reliable in a world full of inconsistencies. And when you become that emotional anchor, that unwavering reference point, that safe space with edges, Not boundaries with barbed wire, but presence with direction. Then attraction becomes a side effect, not a goal. And when that becomes your default, people feel it. They shift when they're around you, not because you ask them to, but because your alignment demands it without words. And this is the mastery of emotional shift. Becoming someone who needs nothing but gives everything through energy, not effort. And from that place, relationships are no longer about control. They're about gravity. And gravity doesn't chase. It pulls quietly, steadily, unavoidably. And to embody that is to become unforgettable. Number 4. The art of silent impact. Nothing reveals your power like what you don't say, what you don't explain, what you withhold, not out of manipulation, but out of mastery. And most haven't even begun to understand the influence of silence because they confuse loudness with strength. But strength is the man who says nothing while his presence says everything. Not because he lacks words, but because he's no longer interested in wasting them on people who haven't earned the weight of his truth. And the reality is, most lose their value the moment they overexpose it. They speak too soon, share too much, reveal too quickly, not realizing that mystery isn't deception, it's dignity. It's what keeps people leaning in, keeps them thinking, keeps them wondering where they stand. And that wondering is the birthplace of interest, because people don't chase what they already understand. They chase what challenges their emotional certainty, and when every part of you is accessible from the beginning, you remove the need for pursuit. And the harsh truth is most will not value what requires no effort to attain. And if every thought, every plan, every emotion is laid out for someone who hasn't earned your attention, then what exactly are you protecting? Because power that explains itself becomes performance. And that's not impact. That's insecurity dressed up as transparency. And in today's world where everyone is trying to be seen, the most magnetic person is the one who doesn't need the spotlight, who enters a room and doesn't shift the energy by demanding it, but by owning it without noise. And that ownership doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from peace, from knowing that the loudest presence is often the one saying the least, because when energy is right, words become unnecessary. And this is what separates the unforgettable from the forgettable. Not volume, but vibration. And that vibration can only be cultivated in solitude, in the parts of life where no one is clapping, where no one is watching, where identity is built not through praise but through patience, through restraint, through the conscious decision to not respond just because provocation presents itself. And that's what most fail to realize. Every time you react to every slight, every insult, every moment of doubt, you become easy to pull off center. And someone who's easily shifted is someone who's easily controlled. And that's where the loss begins, because if others can predict your behavior, they can manipulate your path, but the one who moves in silence, who makes no announcement of his next move, who shows up when it matters but never when it's begged for, that person holds the true keys to influence, because everyone else is chasing attention, and he's holding attention without asking for it, not because he's special, but because he's disciplined. And discipline is the highest form of presence, the kind that doesn't compete, doesn't seek, doesn't chase. It simply exists in strength, and strength like that is rare, and rarity is what causes curiosity, and curiosity turns into value, and value turns into longing, and longing turns into obsession, not the kind built on tricks or tactics, but the kind built on internal gravity. And this is where silent impact lives, in the ability to evoke without effort, to communicate without speaking, to influence without explaining. And the modern world has lost this because everyone's addicted to overexpression, to oversharing, to explaining feelings before they've even processed them. But power doesn't explain, it embodies, and embodiment requires mastery, not of others, but of self. And the self that's mastered doesn't argue to be understood, doesn't beg to be kept, doesn't try to hold people who are already slipping, because he understands that real value is felt in what you don't give away too easily. And this applies in every area, relationships, business, leadership, because in all of them, people remember how you made them feel. And the most impactful are those who made them feel something they couldn't quite explain, a presence that shifted their perception of themselves. And that kind of presence isn't found in people who always react, always respond, always need to be heard. It's found in those who are okay being misunderstood because they've built their identity in the quiet, and that quiet isn't emptiness, it's foundation. The kind of foundation that allows you to walk away without resentment, to be excluded without ego, to be replaced without losing value, because nothing you've built in peace can be destroyed by chaos, and that's what you need to understand. The people who seem to hold power in silence aren't withholding because they're cold. They're withholding because they've learned that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. And access isn't intimacy. Access is responsibility, and giving it too freely only teaches others that you don't value it yourself. And this is why most relationships fail. Not because of lack of words, but because of lack of weight. Weight that comes from withholding just enough to keep the other person thinking, growing, questioning, reaching. And that reaching is what sustains desire. Because no one stays curious about what's fully known. And if you've already handed over every part of your being without requiring any climb, any cost, any standard, then you haven't created a connection. You've created a convenience, and convenience is replaced the moment challenge enters the room. So learn to be the challenge, not through games, but through groundedness, through knowing that your value isn't in what you give, but in what you preserve. And preservation means sometimes walking away when you could argue, going silent when you could explode, saying less when they expect more, not out of withdrawal, but out of wisdom, because wisdom understands that most things don't need reaction, they need reflection, and the person who can hold their power in that space becomes unforgettable, because they become the calm in the chaos, the pause in the noise, the breath in the tension, and that kind of presence doesn't fade, it lingers. And lingering is what builds memory, and memory is what keeps people returning, not to your words, but to your weight. And the heavier your presence, the less you need to perform. And performance is what drains, but presence is what sustains. And the more you live by that, the less you need to prove, because everything you are is already felt without you saying a single word. Number 5. Turn distance into desire. Desire dies in the presence of excess and grows in the space where something valuable is felt but not held. And that's the hardest truth to accept for someone who gives too much, too soon, too often, hoping that love will be a reward for consistency, for loyalty, for being there. But desire doesn't live in certainty. It lives in emotional contrast, in the feeling of needing more of something you can't control. And yet most destroy this dynamic by being constantly available, emotionally predictable, always reachable, always present. And then they wonder why the connection fades, why they get replaced by someone who gives less but feels like more. And the reason is simple. Distance creates depth when done with intention, not as punishment, not as game playing, but as a recognition of your own value. And most never learn this because they're too afraid that space will be filled by someone else, that if they stop texting, calling, showing up, they'll be forgotten, not realizing that being forgotten by someone who never felt your absence is not loss. It's liberation, because people remember what they had to reach for, not what was handed to them without question. And if you always show up first, always initiate, always close the distance, you're teaching them that your energy is disposable, that your presence isn't something they have to earn or value. And over time you become invisible, not because you lack worth, but because your worth was never protected. And that's what changes everything when you finally understand it. Distance is a filter. It reveals who feels your absence versus who replaces your presence. It shows who is truly connected versus who is just comfortable. And if you want to be desired, truly desired, not tolerated, not used, not kept around for emotional convenience, then you must learn how to let the silence do the work that your words never could. Because when you pull back and nothing changes, that's not a loss. It's the truth arriving without delay, and that truth saves you years of over-investing in someone who only saw you as an emotional crutch. And this is where Stoic clarity must enter, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the grounded knowing that space isn't distance from love, it's a test of it. And the people who truly feel you won't forget you when you're gone, they won't replace you the moment you stop over-delivering. They'll feel the weight of your absence, not just because they miss what you do, but because they miss how they felt when you were around. And that's the shift. You don't want to be remembered for your actions. You want to be remembered for your impact. And impact isn't built in presence alone. It's built in the emotional wake you leave behind when you walk away. And to create that wake, you have to stop filling every space with your effort. Stop making yourself available at all costs. Stop chasing connection through performance, and start recognizing that desire grows in quiet, in pause, in space, in the unanswered text, in the weekend where you don't reach out, in the moment when they expect you to validate and you choose stillness instead, not out of manipulation, but because you finally trust that if it's real, it doesn't need force. And if it needs force, it was never real. And this is what most don't want to accept, because it requires letting go of control, letting go of being needed, and standing in the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. But that discomfort is what sharpens you, what reveals your strength, what creates the very attraction you've been chasing, because nothing is more compelling than someone who can pull away with peace, who can go quiet without guilt, who can live without performance. And when you live like that, you stop being the predictable source of dopamine and start becoming the unforgettable source of inner shift. And that inner shift is what creates desire that lingers, desire that confuses, desire that brings someone back, not because of your effort, but because of how their world feels without your presence anchoring it. And that kind of presence can't be faked, it can't be rushed, it can't be built by always being available. It's built by knowing when to step back, when to let space speak, when to let your silence say what your words never could. And that's the art of distance, not pulling away to punish, but pulling away to protect the value of your energy. And when you treat your energy like it's precious, others begin to as well, and those who don't reveal themselves early, which is a blessing, not a betrayal. Because every time you give distance and they vanish, you just removed someone who only stayed because of access, not because of alignment. And alignment is what matters more than attention. And if that alignment isn't there, no amount of showing up will save it. And the moment you fully integrate this truth, your entire approach to relationships will shift, because now you're not chasing, you're observing, you're not proving, you're filtering, you're not needing, you're choosing. And from that place, distance becomes your ally, not your fear, because you no longer see space as a threat. You see it as a tool, a strategy, a reflection of your value. And when you give someone space and they rise to meet you, you know it's real. And when you give space and they disappear, you know it's right to let them go, because you don't chase what's real. You align with it. And alignment always begins with self-respect. And self-respect is built in the spaces you no longer try to fill with noise. And this is how desire is reborn. Not in constant presence, but in intentional absence. Not in begging to be seen, but in choosing to step back and let your value echo louder than any word you could say. Because that echo is what haunts, what lingers, what lasts. And that's what makes distance not a risk, but your greatest asset when used with wisdom. If you're tired of being the man who always gives and still gets left, if you're done watching your value drop every time you show up too much, too soon, too often, then this is your moment. Society doesn't want you to find this truth. They want you blind, soft, overgiving, and replaceable. But the Stoic relationship blueprint will shatter that for good. It's packed with timeless principles that rewire your entire mindset and show you how to move in power, not panic. And now, it's available in audiobook format, so you can let it sink into your spirit while walking, training, or resetting your focus. The link is in the comments. If you're ready to reclaim your place, comment, "I will never beg again," like the video, and subscribe, because another man out there is one decision away from saving years of heartbreak. Be the reason he wakes up. Be the reason you never go through this pain again.